Thank you guys for coming to Joe's celebration of life. I'm going to start off with a Scottish air. Joe loved this violin. He asked me about it all the time. And so I'm going to play this for him and for everybody else.
My skirt's not. I just want to thank you all for being here today. And to people that are tuning in to Facebook Live, I hope that it's working. We're having some technical difficulties, but hello. I'm going to start off. Can you all hear me? Is it audible? Okay. I'm going to start off with just a little excerpt from the Rig Veda. This in particular was in the brochure from my brother's memorial service in 2003. And I apologize that I'm reading this on my phone. I don't have the physical copy with me. But it's 2025, so phones. Where light is perpetual, in the world in which the sun is placed, in that immortal, imperishable world, place me. Where the inner chamber of the sun is, where these great waters are, there make me immortal. Where in the third heaven, in the third sphere, the sun wanders at will, where the regions are filled with light, there make me immortal. Where wishes and desires are, where the region of the sun is, where food and delight are found, there make me immortal. Where there is happiness, pleasure, joy, and enjoyment, where the wishes of the wisher are obtained, there make me immortal. think Lauren is going to come up and introduce some of the folks that are going to be reading.
So before I introduce some of the folks that are reading, I'm actually going to read something from David and Carol Carlisle. And Carol sent me something that I had to put on my iPad. And so, you know, like Josie said, it's 2025, so I'm going to read it off of there. Before I read what David and Carol sent to me, I just wanted to say a few things about Joe and what I think of when I think of Joe. And there are a couple of things, and one of the first things that, not maybe the first thing, something that comes to mind for me so much is his innate and unbelievable sensibilities with music. He had such a gift for groove, and when he and Carol would lock in at playing the Irish music, it was just such a dream, and I'm going to miss that so much. There was one tune set that we played, and there was one section where Joe and I always looked at each other because he was rocking out on that G chord, and it gave so much life to what we were playing, what the melody instruments were playing. And he just had a remarkable sensibility of music, and sadly, I don't think he understood just how talented he was. I was always having to kind of hit him over the head with it and just say, just trust your instincts, Joe, they're so good, they're so good. But the other thing, the primary thing that I think of when I think of Joe is his laugh and his smile. Because Joe didn't laugh just a ha-ha. Joe laughed with his whole body and his whole being. He just, every fiber of his being laughed. And usually when I was in the presence of that laughter, it was because he was laughing at me or some stupid thing I said. But I cherished it all the same, and it was usually followed with a, "Oh, Lauren," and a shake of the head. That's the memory that I want to hold of him, because it's still sort of surreal to me that I won't see him at the Sunday sessions, and I won't get to hear his mandolin, and I won't get to hear his laughter, but I have it in here, and so I hope that you guys can find something of Joe that you carry with you as well. David and Carol Carlisle obviously were really close friends with Joe, and they are in North Carolina at the Swannanoa Celtic gathering. And so Carol sent me a little something to read, so I'm going to go ahead and read that from them. Joe loved music of all kinds and had a deep knowledge of a wide variety of musicians. Periodically, Joe would send David music videos ranging from classical pieces performed by Fritz Kreisler, Rachel Barton Pine, and the London Sinfonia, to folk, Irish, and country musicians like John Fahey, Norman Blake, and George Jones. He would also send photos of beautiful old rare violins, as well as photos and the names of modern violin makers. We understood Joe to be a known presence among fine instrument dealers, and that he found violins for some of the premier artists in the world, including jazz violinist Stefan Grappelli, bluegrass fiddler Kenny Baker, and the classical violinist Hilary Hahn. I, by the way, did not know that until I read this from Dave and Carol, so those are three really amazing violinists. Going on in Carol's voice. One thing David and I are eternally grateful for is that Joe arranged for us to be introduced at Behner Funeral Home, a fine instrument dealer in Chicago, to play very rare Stradivarius and Guarneri violins. We will never forget these famous and brilliant sounds. Joe had acquaintances from all over the world, builders, highly trained makers, and business professionals. We here in Fairfield enjoyed Joe's stories and accounts of the music world. Making music was always a positive, good time. We will miss his smile and laughter and send all our love to Sue, Josie, and all the dear friends of Joe's. While they were at the Swannanoa gathering, they took a class in Celtic singing, and they were taught a song called "Here's to You" by Alan A. Bell, and they asked me to read an excerpt from it. It's called "Here's to You." So here's to you in our time together. I will share with you a parting glass, and bid adieu with some smile and laughter. Our time apart will be short and pass. a long, long road while it lies before me, and fate will meet me where it will. And through valleys and over mountains, I will not forget, but remember you still. So that's from Dave and Carol Carlisle. And I wanted to invite up Lang to speak. And Lang, you told me your last name, and I just already forgot it, so forgive me. Lang, what is this Stallings? Oh, I didn't forget it. I was just afraid to make a mistake. So Lang Stallings played with Joe as well. I often forget that Joe wasn't just our musician, that he played with other people too. And he played with the Fairtown Ramblers with Ann, and was Allison playing as well? And so I'm sure Lang has many fond memories and good things to say about Joe.
Well, I'm in a bit of a daze right now. It is 2025. I have an iPad. I left it at home. I had written something out yesterday and went over it with my editor, and it was pretty much red inked all the way through. So I don't have that prepared little thing. It's only 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 52 seconds. But it did start out pretty good, and it started out, the first sentence, Joe was the best high school friend I never had. It was, the piece was kind of a conceit that having known Joe for these last 10 or 12 years, it was like we had gone to high school together. We had shared the same sensibilities, music, just everything. And I could have imagined that we had been to high school together. But the way I'd written it was, maybe my editor said, was kind of confusing. So I don't have that today. But I was recalling in it how I met Joe, and my wife Jennifer and I had been here in the late 70s. I graduated in 80 from MIU. And we lived in Seattle for close to 30 years, and we came back out here through circumstances. We weren't expecting to be here. We moved into one of the chateau apartments, and Keith DeBoer, Keith, are you here? Why aren't you here, Keith? The second night we were here, he said, there's a thing at Cafe Paradiso as a thank you to all the musicians of Fairfield. So went down there, met Tim first. He introduced me to Joe. And it seemed like from that point on, Joe was a great friend. I was with him a lot. He drove me places because I only had the one car and I was trying to get work. And I was going to go someplace with this, and I didn't make a note. As my point was, I was not going to make any other notes. So I was trying to keep it all in my head, and it didn't quite work. And I don't want to go right to the end yet. So, well, that's the thing about Joe. You know, and Lauren, you kind of pinpointed, there's a certain lack of confidence he had, which is unwarranted, because he had a great voice, and I'd try to get him to sing, and we'd sing some harmony together. He was always on pitch, but he would never commit to learning something. And I see some nods of yes. So I really miss that we weren't able to do more of that together. It was great playing with Joe. The thing about him, when I think about him, I don't even have to close my eyes. You know, his presence. He just had a kind of evenness to him. And then next thing is his sense of humor. He was quite funny in a very unique way, and I do not know how to describe it. Does someone want to describe it? Does anyone know? But it was just remarkable. Yeah.
His favorite quote from Howard's father. dad was an avid lover of Howard Stern, and I know a lot of people probably don't approve of that, but I grew up listening to Howard Stern. Anyways, his father used to say, "Don't be stupid, you moron." And my dad and I would always say that to each other. We would say it to my mom. And that was just one small part.
Words of wisdom from Howard Stern's father. And of course he was, okay, I'm going to come to the end here. And that is my gratitude to Joe. First of all, for being a friend and a great friend, a musical friend. But he introduced me to a bunch of guys. We called the coffee group amongst ourselves. And he was an integral part of that, and we miss him because he really, all the good qualities that Joe had shone through when he was with us. I'm sure with everybody else too, but we enjoyed him, we loved him, and we miss him. And thank you for listening.
So I don't know where he went. There he is. I'm going to ask David Siegel to come up next. David, and I hope I don't embarrass you, David, but I'm going to say this anyway. David and Joe, during the Irish sessions, reminded me of the kids in the back of the classroom screwing around. Because they were always joking, and they were always had some kind of inside joke that none of us were privy to. And it honestly was one of my favorite things, was watching them. I felt like I was watching the two kids in the back of the classroom. So I can't wait to hear what David has to say.
It's lovely to see everybody here. Joe was, as I found out after he died, he was probably my best friend, and I'm sorry, I'm having trouble getting through this. And I think he was. We played different roles for each other, and there was certainly, and I think he did this with other guys. There was a sort of fatherly quality in our relationship because he needed a father. He really did. No, I'm just kidding. It's the old switcheroo there. This is one of the places I do stand-up, this open mic and funerals. And I have bombed at funerals. I bombed at a funeral of, who was it? But it was really funny because I bombed and then someone later came up and killed. And it was like, oh man. Anyway, get my balance back here. But Joe was really a poetic. He was a poetic soul wrapped in a very tight blanket, and he had a way of looking at things that was very strict. That if he said it was one way, that's the way it was. If you want to kill, I said, oh, Joe, man, I got all these ants in my house, and it's taken me months to deal with. He's like, just, put out a trap, and when they come in, you just kill them right there. Okay, but he was, I think it really helped him navigate things because he was very certain of his reality, and he was also very devoted he's a very devoted friend. He was very devoted to Maharishi and Maharishi's knowledge. He didn't want to hear any other stuff, he was, and he was, here's a funny story which really illustrates this for me. I had to junk my car years ago. No, that's not true. I had to junk my car months ago, and I called a guy at Fairfield. He said, I'll give you $125 for it or something. I said, no, that's not going to work. So I called Centerville, And the guy said, over the phone, what model and everything, I'll give you $300 for it. So I told Joe this, and he goes, no. I'm like, Joe, the guy said, he goes, no, and he went on and on, like, no, the guy's not. But when it came time to drive to Centerville, he drove with me to Centerville, to get because I had to drop the car off, and he drove me back, and I got $300, and I remember he was astounded. It really, he couldn't believe it. Going to lunch with Joe, our primary thing was playing music and going to lunch, and when we went to lunch, I heard, one of my favorite things was I got to hear I got to hear sort of secondhand what was going on in the town through the coffee group, so that was cool. Is the coffee, what's going on? So I was always up to date. And he also knew all kinds of people from his life. My favorite was this guy, Dr. So he sold these high-end violins, so he would interact with rich people and people who with in the art world. So he knew some eccentric characters, and one of them was this guy, Dr. Axelrod, in Neptune, New Jersey, his plane had crashed in the jungle in the Amazon, and he was stranded there, and while he was there, he discovered new fish that they named after him. And then he came back, and he had a PhD, and they started writing. They developed a special dog bone, a plastic dog bone, and the books for pets that, every pet, they had publishing house, and he developed it. And the guy made millions and millions of dollars. So I would hear about this guy, and ham radio guys in Chicago whose houses were filled from top to bottom with ham radios, and violin repair people and makers, and there were, money changing. He told me a story about changing cash in Korea down a dark alley, and there was a lot of great stories, and he's also, relentless salesperson. I think if we had people raise their hands, he'd swindle a lot of people out of instruments here. He started on me. I had a beautiful 1950s Gibson hollow body guitar, and he would just say, that thing's a piece of junk. That was how he started. And oh man, that thing that's not right for you. That guitar it's all beat up. Look at this, and anything he wanted to sell, he would begin by, and not for months. We're talking for years. I'm not kidding. That violin that he would always talk to you about, he would talk to me about that thing too. He's like, I got to get that violin. She's not going to let me sell it. But for years, and if he would have been able to, he would have written letters to me. Would have been too weird. But he used to write letters. He helped me write a letter for something once, and he was a big booster too. He's always, you're the best. You're the. I was looking at a text message before I came up. I haven't been able to delete my what do you do with their phone? He's in my favorites, what do I do? It's just, I called him once, 2 weeks after he died, just to hear the message, but I looked at my text, and I'm like, I can't go out to, he's like, you want to go to dinner at the Chinese buffet? I said, I can't go. I got money issues this week or something. And he's like, why don't you rob a bank? That'll, and our relationship was kind of contentious sometimes extremely so, and sometimes a little bit. But he wasn't that way with everyone. I remember he was, some of you know Michael Sugarman, another musician, and they had arranged to listen to some esoteric musician that they both liked. And it was like I was seeing a different Joe. He was very gentle and just so loving, and and they just talked about music, and I have something from Michal Shababo, who we played in this Shabbat band for the synagogue, did a Friday night thing, and he loved this. He was like a little bit Jewish. He loved things Jewish. He would always blurt out, Baruch Hashem, and things like that. He also loved to yell out no in public places, I remember, and there was a story too about coming across the table at somebody at the coffee group at one point. I'm not going to tell it, but there was some good stories. He was a little insane. That was one of the things I really liked about him. But he coped very well, and he loved us. He loved us. If you gauge the quality of a person by their friends, man, he's doing pretty well. So this is from Michal, who asked if I would read this, and I'll read this and then maybe just say one or two things or stop. Joe, I didn't know you and she had kids too. She had these 3 kids, and one of them was this little Davidi, and he would run around. He was really energetic, and she loved Joe, and they bonded, and Joe got him some special book or something, and I remember we were playing, and this kid was like, I was trying to tune my guitar, and they were starting, and I wasn't in tune, and this little kid in a tiger suit was like crawling under my chair, trying to and those 2 bonded really well, and Joe, and he was great. He played in this group, and we had it was a wonderful thing, and him being there was really made it great. I didn't know you for long. You were always so warm, lovable, like a giant teddy bear who my 5-year-old son loved to play with. You had a special connection with him. You generously played music and shared your talent, joined our band, the Semi-Clean Lounge Rats, joined us for services at Beth Shalom, for rehearsals on stage at Cafe Paradiso, and of course the incredible Irish music every Sunday. You gave of your talent so openly, played beautiful music, fitting in perfectly with the soundscapes around you. You were so kind to me always, a good, humble, gentle, loving man, the grandpa everybody wants. Thank you for being my friend. I will miss you. Rest in peace. And just thank you, Joe. No!
So I think we're going to have one more person speak, and then Josie is going to come and read some things from people who haven't or weren't able to be here. And then she'll give the eulogy, and then we have a slideshow with some of Joe's favorite music. But before we have Josie come up, we are going to have Jim Rubis, and everybody in town, I think, knows Jim Rubis, and he's part of the coffee group, and I like to think of them as the quilting group or the sewing circle, because really that's kind of what you guys are. I mean that only kindly and affectionately. So why don't you come on up, Jim?
If you spend much time with Joe, you probably recognize that. Although I would never wear them in January like he did. They're not his, by the way. They are mine. They just look like them. So I'm going to start with an old cliche that I used to think was pretty silly, but it does make a lot of sense, and it appeals to me more now. Don't be sad it's over. Be glad that it happened. My relationship with Joe started with the coffee group, or the coffee guys. This is a group that started about 35 or 40 years ago, evolved from a running group that Bobby Lyons started. And years later, Bobby invited Joe into the group. It was probably about 15 years ago. Joe soon became one of the most liked, and he was vital to our group. Joe was always open. He listened with interest, and he added thoughtful and humorous stories. He was happy poking fun at members or other things in the community, Lauren, just like he said, but he was always just as happy to be the butt of a joke. His curiosity was one of his attributes that I really appreciated and appealed to me. He knew a little about so many topics and very much about a few things. And he always wanted to know more. His music, no matter the genre or the artist, he could talk about it with knowledge. With farming, he always had questions for me, sometimes as simple as, "Hey, Jim, what's the difference between hay and straw?" Or it might be as complex as the role of government in ag, and who could explain that? He would ask Bobby about sports. Joe didn't really know a lot about sports. He'd ask Mike about law. He'd ask Rod about gardening, and so on down the line. He was genuinely curious, too. It wasn't just being polite. Special for me was how much he enjoyed going to the Rubus farm with Ted the dog. And sometimes he even took Sue and Josie out. He often commented to me about how peaceful he felt sitting beside the pond. Several others of you have mentioned about Joe and peace. Also special for me was his interest and affection for my grandkids, Omar, who he always called Omarski, and Rocio. He often said about him, they're good kids, Jim. So I'm blessed with memories of Joe by the pond discussing an old song like Ivan Skavinsky Skavar. Anybody else ever heard of that one? There's one in the back. Great. Joe sitting in the Congusto chair at Bobby's, quizzing the rest of us about the intricacies or the simplicities of football. And of course, slapping his knee and chuckling about the latest story from Rod about Preston Pearson, or one of the stories I tell about my past infamous friend. Those stories won't be repeated. So I just want to say, keep Joe in your hearts and keep him with your favorite memories.
You're tall, Jim. So I guess there are some people who were not on my list who wanted to speak. Is it Diane, did you say? So Diane's going to come up and say a few words. Is there anybody else who would want to say something about Joe? If you do, just come on up. Tim wants to say something. So Tim, why don't you come up after Diane?
I didn't prepare anything, but I've been thinking about it for a long time. About 50 years ago, Joe and other TM teachers in my home center in Indiana, Fort Wayne, were supportive of me going to teacher training. And while I was there, I just remember being so elated about everything, the knowledge, everything. I remember looking out a window and just seeing this kind of slice of the mountains and all the colors, and it was just incredible. So I wrote one of those little aerograms to the TM Center at home. You remember those? It takes a week to get there. But his answer was, there is no distance in our hearts. And it just stops me every time from any sense of lack. And then on the other side of it, of course, is a longing to reconnect. But there is no distance in our hearts. He just exemplified that reality. So I think also maybe now he's representing time, you could say. We observe some passage of time. Here's one event, another event, another event. But I think Maharshi would say time is enjoying the timeless. So all is well. I'm honored to have known Joe and his family and his friends and all he represented. So thank you, and all the best.
I just wanted to say something that has been implied by everybody who came up so far, but I just wanted to put it in so many words. And that is that Joe was incredibly generous in really unique ways that I don't really know whether I've ever seen anything quite like it. And I'm sure that other people have their own very personal stories because they were very personal. He would figure out, he was very insightful. He would look into people deeply as to what they needed, and he would figure out ways to give them what he thought they needed. Maybe it was just because he saw a lot of room for improvement with me, but he had a lot of very incisive things he was kind of nudging me in various ways always to encourage me, in other words. So I just wanted to say that because I think everybody's offerings today were implying that, but no one said it outright. So an incredibly generous person in no uncertain terms, very consciously generous. Thanks, Joe.
So I just want to read a couple things before what I wrote myself. This first is just a very quick little story from Davy Bar-Shimon, another guy, I think maybe my age. He lived in Fairfield. He lives in North Carolina now, and he couldn't be here. But they played music together, and he sent me a couple of stories and said, just choose whatever you feel comfortable with. And this one really just exemplified my father. One of Joe and my favorite tunes to play was a rendition of the classic old-time tune, Liza Jane. It's a catchy little ditty, and it's just plain fun to play as well. Over the course of time, I started hearing different versions of this song being played elsewhere, including several times in New Orleans in marching jazz bands. Later on, I took an African drumming class in Fairfield, and we started learning a new rhythm that had foreign words to it that just happened to be sung to the same melody as the tune Liza Jane. Turns out that old tune we were playing came over originally from West Africa via the slave trade and made it into all areas of the music culture of the American Deep South. The words to the drumming beat we learned were roughly, and this is roughly, Fungi alafaya ashai ashai. Don't ask me what it means because I don't remember. I told Joe about my discovery one day, and we decided to start singing those lyrics whenever we played Liza Jane. It fit the tune perfectly and made it even more fun to play. Eventually, our lyrics started devolving or evolving into something more comfortable for our English-speaking mouths, and we changed it to, "Fungi, I love you, I say." So I will miss the days whenever I'd see Joe, and the first thing he'd say to me is, "Fungi, I love ya." This next one is from two of my brother's best friends from when we lived in Connecticut. Matt and Zuki. They said, "We hope you'll allow a medium-winded story from the brothers Connecticut, Zuki and Matt. We were very close with Ben in middle and high school. We played music together, ate together, laughed endlessly, and made fun of each other relentlessly. An invariable part of this friendship was a generous helping of time at the Overmyer house. Again, playing music in the basement, laughing, teasing Josie, and occasionally lighting the house on fire. While I was in it, by myself. Most importantly, we spent solid time with Josie, Sue, some birds, our little pet budgies, and of course, Joe. We also had one very privileged afternoon where we, Zuki, Ben, and I decided to go into New York City when we were teenagers. Big Joe invited us to see his office, and maybe Ben knew, but Zuki and I did not understand what we were in for. We walked into this gorgeous space adorned in wood and leather that told the tale of old New York cigars. We walked through the demo space of the office, where the walls were acoustically treated with complex graphical panels that we were told would disperse the sound for a better listening experience. There were motorized 4-inch thick soundproof windows that would close as needed to still the din of the city and neighboring Lincoln Center. Sure, we said, not fully understanding the importance of what must have been the quietest room for miles and what was just past it. We then walked through doors that seemed to demarcate sacred areas that the clientele never saw. And the halls were lined with violins, violas, cellos, bows of all sizes, some finished, some not. Some work desks covered in tools we'd never seen, prepped to work expertly on any of these waiting instruments. And then, in the back, we came to the crown jewel, a full-on walk-in safe with a big round door you couldn't budge yourself, and you'd expect in movies like Ocean's 11, deep underneath the Bellagio, not on a middle floor of a New York City building. He let us go in and gawk at the rare stringed instruments and varied accoutrements that explained the mystery of the demo room. The business was selling incredible stringed instruments, old, new, but all fabulous and many rare, all poised to find their next brilliant owner. Speaking of, we were quickly ushered back to the demo room, and as the motorized windows whirred shut to keep out the constant Upper West Side fervor, a future buyer was tuning one of these unequaled instruments, proving our suspicions about the room's purpose, and then launching into a test piece so practiced we could have been across the street at Lincoln Center itself. She was gorgeously talented, the room was silent, and we watched wordlessly, finally understanding the moment until she was done and turned to her manager to discuss the instrument. We left quietly with music in our ears and smiles on our faces. We had other plans in New York that day, but before we left, Joe asked us to carry a violin case to our next meeting spot so he wouldn't have to. A ratty-looking thing that felt light, so we were happy not to carry anything worth much. We wandered at our pace, but when we met up with Joe later, He asked about the case, which of course we had protected. It was only then he unzipped the ratty cover of an impeccable, shiny leather violin case that contained an uncommon bow that Joe explained was of great value to a client. I don't know if it was for the young woman who played so brilliantly earlier, but we imagined all of his clients equally gifted and this delivery equally important. Now, I think he neglected to tell us the true value of what we carried so we wouldn't be nervous, but it's clear he trusted us as 15-year-olds with the task. And we came through feeling proud and full and accomplished, as if we were teamed up with a brilliant new phenom who needed their case and their bow. Joe did that for us, and we'll never forget it. We'll never forget his quiet generosity. We'll never forget his generous mustache, and we'll never forget him. Okay. I am going to try to get through this. I wanted to start with an excerpt from a book that I just finished reading recently. Felt really appropriate to how I've been feeling recently. And somebody actually, I was on the square the other day after work, and I ran into, I can't remember who it was, but he was riding by on his bike, and he stopped quickly when he saw me. And he put his hands on his heart, and he said, "You already know what I want to say, and I don't need to say it." And as he was riding away, he said, "Your dad was truly a great man." From this book, how language fails again and again. The words will never feel like the thing. The language will never be the thing. I am unsure of what I could ever say that could do justice to my father, and this is the part where language fails, but I will try. Not long before he passed, I was telling him how confused I felt about my life, about my place in the world. As he has done so many times in my life, he wrote me an email, and he began by saying, "I will try to write coherently." Anyone who has ever received a text or an email from my dad or seen a Facebook post knows that he had or could have a very funny way of writing. And I can't remember who it was. I think maybe Dennis, you told me that earlier this year, somebody told, I think it was you, Dennis, and it was maybe when you and Lauren had been out of town or something. And my dad had sent them a text when they were out of town, and he had driven by the house, which he was not asked to do, by the way, just to keep an eye on it. He said, he texted Lauren, he said, "Lauren, house looks good, Joe." And he would sign his texts to me sometimes too. See, Junior, which is what one of the many names he called me, Junior. He said, "Junior, dog has been fed, Joe." So the fact that his last email to me began with, "I will try to write coherently," feels very bittersweet. I don't know if he felt something at that time, like life was beginning to shift for us. But this is part of what he wrote to me. "I am going to try to write coherently. I came from a middle-class family where education was important, but due to the fact that my father died young, I had no one to really push me or guide me. This, of course, led me into all sorts of trouble and problems. And I was so lucky that I took the direction of Maharshi. From the moment I learned TM, my life started to blossom. I was lucky. You and Ben grew up in the overachiever town of Greenwich, upper middle and upper class world. The parents of these kids were serious about education and careers, and it was in the blood. You are not brought up that way. And then with the passing of our dearest Ben, may he rest in peace, all things changed. It hurt your college chances because you were lonely, and I'm sure afraid, as we all were. It set in motion many trying situations in our lives. I should have been tougher, but I just could not be, because I'm a softie. And he was a softie through and through. And he was never a match for me. He took me to my first day of kindergarten, and I refused to get out of the car. Sorry, actually, let me blow my nose real quick so I'm not. I refused to get out of the car, and he tried to pull me out, and I bit him on the neck. And I think he may still have had a bit of a scar from that on his neck to this day. And in preschool, there was one day where he was supposed to get me dressed and take me, but I refused to wear anything but a slip, that should have been worn under a dress. And I vividly remember that morning of him chasing me around our house in Evanston. And my mom later got a call from the preschool saying she needed to come pick me up because I wasn't dressed appropriately. And this is preschool. I told him in my email back to him that I know he might regret not being tougher on me, but that I'm so stubborn that it may not have even mattered, and it may have pushed me even further away. But instead, I got the dad who, when I was in the depths of a terrible heartbreak years ago and sobbing for hours in the middle of the night when I was living at my parents' house, he came into my room, sat with me on the bed, and did Vedic chanting until I fell asleep for about an hour as I cried. He was a softie and so many other things. I have always greatly admired my dad's extensive knowledge of music, musical instruments, and motorcycles, his devotion to his spiritual life, and the attention and affection he showed to others. He was so kind, so full of love. His stories from his life were unmatched, and he was the funniest and wisest person I have ever met. He instilled such a deep love of music in me and my brother, and my entire life has been overflowing with music as a result. My brother and I had a unique experience being witness to the niche world that my dad's career entitled him to. The privilege of a childhood being taken to classical concerts is not something that I take for granted. The privilege of a childhood surrounded by beauty, thanks to not only my dad, but our mother as well, is not something I take for granted. If I could snap my fingers and go back and relive my childhood over and over again, I would do it in a heartbeat. If only to have the four of us back together. No relationship or life is perfect. No childhood is perfect. Of course, there were challenges, but it was as close to perfect as I believe it could be. We were loved as much as children could possibly be loved. He was the ultimate balm for me, my reflection in the mirror, my greatest annoyance, and my greatest love. I felt for many years that my dad and I have known each other for thousands of years, throughout thousands of iterations of our souls. I recently wrote to a longtime family friend and a man my dad respected and whose opinion he valued greatly. I expressed how lost I feel spiritually and how worried I am about my dad, if his soul has truly let down all that caused him pain. Because I know my dad carried around deep pain all of his life that grew exponentially when we lost my brother. And he said, for him, you need have no worries. In his life was great silence and being, cultivated through his many years of devoted practice. His warm and generous nature was a blessing to all he knew, and his devotion to the Supreme was never diluted by the demands of the householder life. He was, I know, a great inspiration for you spiritually, along with your strong emotional and filial ties. He was even a great inspiration to me, and I'm surrounded by avid yogis. After so many years, you carry him and his lessons in life in your heart, even in your DNA. My spin on this is that nature is now giving you the opportunity to continue the tradition, yet be self-sufficient, scoping out your path with the guidance of your own inner light, which is notably bright and enough for that purpose. I will do my best to honor everything my dad gave me and scope out my path. I will do my best to honor everything my family has given me, because we have given each other some really challenging lessons, but I feel that we've also given each other the love and strength needed to continue scoping out our paths, whether they be in the spiritual realm, as my dad and my brother are, or here in the human, as my mom and I are. He was the first to hold me when I was born, and I was the last to hold him after he passed. It feels an impossible task to live in this world without him. But as my dad said to me on a very regular basis, be happy and enjoy life. So through the heartbreak, I will do my best, and I hope you all will too, to be happy and enjoy life, because that is truly what he would want. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming up and speaking, everybody for being here, everybody tuning in from all over the world, and for the kindness and care that everybody has shown me and my mom during this time. It's about an almost 9-minute slideshow that a dear friend of mine put together for me because I'm technologically not smart, to a few songs. And Behner, take it away. That video that I took was just a couple days before my dad passed away, and I'm so happy that I was there and got that, because that was my dad. Thank you again so much for coming. We really, really appreciate it. And if you'd like to stick around and have some treats, we'll be here. Thank you.